Okay, we are at our October Mallets and Manuscripts meeting. So let's start with iteration. So this is a piece, just so you all know, that Joseph submitted. He's been wanting to talk about it for a while. Unfortunately, he's not able to be here today. But it is for the Rose Wind Duo, and it's a piece for marimba and saxophone. I think that's good. Cool. Thank you, Trigby, for doing that. So the piece is for alto sax, marimba, and tape. I actually found a little website about it. So let me share my screen so you all can see that. Here we go. So it's based on this mathematical equation. Can you see that?
It's a little blurry. Oh, now it's coming into focus.
Yeah.
This is really cool.
Yeah. So it's refers to the feedback loop nature of the equation. So I guess like with this equation, you get iterations of the same. I guess there's some like number thing that's occurring that's an iteration.
I actually know what it is.
You do?
Yeah, I have a degree in mathematics. Which is the most pretentious thing I could have said. But essentially like the xn's on the right side are like inputs from the previous, like if you imagine like a line of numbers, you take like the first one and you plug it into that equation, it gives you the next one. And then you do that, and so it takes itself inside of itself a bunch of times.
Ah.
And so yeah, it just like feeds in. Once you create the new number, you feed it back into itself and create the next one, and then you feed it back into itself and creates the next one. And it just like is like a stacking type of thing.
Okay, so I'm going to take your expertise knowledge and ask you about the graph below. So what is the graph below? Like, what are the lines in this graph from? Do you know?
I think it's from this equation. What I remember, we talked about this. I'm taking a class about sonification, which is just taking data and turning it into like sound and music essentially,
Okay.
which is a very broad like area of study that's going on right now. And
Hmm.
the class I'm taking is very like low level version of it. But it's really cool. And you can even see he talks about sonification, but essentially the equation has like a predictable structure in the beginning. You can see like there's the line and then it splits into two lines, like about halfway through, and then it splits into four. And then when it gets like all wavy like that on the right side, that's where the equation breaks down and becomes like chaotic in nature, like it's not predictable. And
Mm.
so the iterations become so frequent that it's you can't predict what they are based on the just how the equation works. And so I imagine, I don't know this piece at all, but I imagine that just based on the description, it kind of says that they're taking that and turning it into what I think is like the electronics sound.
Mm. Okay.
And so that's those like clicks in the background are probably based on like the periodic structure of the graph.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I also think like listening to the whole piece, I think that the marimba saxophone part also is a little like it I think it oscillates between being what you expect it to be and then also being chaotic. So I think he's messing with both the electronics and the percussion in terms of and percussion and saxophone in terms of like when they're what you think they're going to be and when they're not what you think they're going to be.
Yeah, for sure. This is really interesting. I had never seen an application quite like this because a lot of people just like will apply like, oh, x-axis is pitch and y-axis is like time, and then that they literally just like plug it in and that's like the piece. But this one seems more like they're kind of like messing around with like the human aspect of like what it means to like iterate and move between those things, which is really, I think, interesting to explore artistically.
Yeah, I'll drop the link to this in the chat so we can all look at it on our own. There you go. I also think it was funny the first time I listened to it, I was very confused with the electronics because I thought it was just my computer not working correctly.
I thought the same.
Because the sound is so repetitive and it's very similar, which I guess goes with the whole idea of it being an iteration. Like at first, you're like, oh, it's just a mistake in the audio I'm listening to. But then as it goes on, you realize that it's a part of the music, which I think would probably be more obvious in a live performance.
Yeah, I wondered how that would work because it sounded like it was really clean, but it'd be cool to hear it like bouncing around like the hall in a
Mm-hmm.
because
Yeah.
sometimes yeah. Go ahead.
No, I don't have anything to say. I was just saying yes.
Oh, okay. I just the interaction whenever I hear like fixed media pieces, I like the interactions between like the ways that the acoustic instruments and electrons like blend together. And there was some of that with like them. I think were there like marimba parts that were like in the electronics only? It sounded kind of like it.
That's a good question. I'm not certain because I haven't seen a score, but that would make a lot of sense because, like, especially that opening figure they have, it's so dense. I was trying to figure out how two players were able to create that, but it would make a lot more sense if the tape is also playing with them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
I know what
even
you're.
like yeah.
Go ahead.
There were like sorry. there was like a moment where it sounded like that like it was like these perfect like terraced like chords that were like going up and down, and I thought that
Mm-hmm.
sounded electronic-y.
Yes. Yeah. I know what you're talking about. That's cool. That is cool. I also know what you're talking about when you were saying like mixed media in the hall. I feel like that's something, and maybe this is just like a technological advancement we still need to find, but like fixed media sounds so different depending on the hall you're in. It's not like a live performer where you can say, "Oh, I don't really like this. Can you switch this?" Like if you have a really good AV person, then yes, possibly you can get the track to sound the way you want it to exactly in the hall. But I feel like there are sometimes limitations or weird quirks that come up. And I don't know, some people might not like them, but I think it's interesting because it's different depending on where you are.
Yeah, it's almost like something you have to adjust per hall. Like people think it's just like a thing you turn on, but it's like another instrument you have to take into account, like how it will resonate in the space and stuff. I never thought about that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, it sounds like this reminds me of like this vibraphone piece we played called Blindnesses by Isaac Shankler that has like it's live processing. It's not like a fixed like thing you turn on. But
Mm-hmm.
that was like a vibraphone and we had mics and then it like live processed it and put it into the hall, and that piece was kind of about like the way that like the vibraphone interacts with like the way the recording is live glitched, or it's like has reverb or something, and then like
Mm.
different like patches that you've switched on like throughout the piece.
I don't know that piece. I wrote it down. I'm gonna look into it.
It's cool. There's like a version there's like options for 4 vibraphones, like 1 vibraphone per person, 2 vibraphones, 2 per person, and then like 1 vibraphone, so all 4 in 1, which is the one people play most frequently, but it's also like the weirdest version because I don't think he wrote it with that quite in mind. But it's cool. I think it's Third Coast has a recording of it that's out there that's pretty nice. Got a lot of like vibraphone bending and stuff, but it's a lot of coordination. The score is kind of like unintuitive at first. There's a lot of like rhythmic bowing that just happens like on its own. And with the live processing, it can be kind of hard to like get a grip on like where the beat is exactly sometimes at first in a first rehearsal.
Yes. I can imagine like hearing articulation and like rhythm with bowing can be very, very difficult. But it's also, I don't know, when it's done right, super cool.
It's really cool. I don't want to take up all the time though.
No. That's what we're here for, is to chat about this.
That's true.
Thank you so much.
I'm wondering, when was this piece written? 2016 was when this recording was released. Okay, so it's still fairly recent. Let's see what he says on his website. No, 2016. So this is in the scope of pieces, it's fairly recent. So it would be interesting though, like thinking about live processing. Are there any pieces for saxophone and marimba duo that use live processing?
Probably, but I don't know any off the top of my head.
I feel like this is something to look into.
Yeah, live processing I think is rarer because it's harder to. You have to know more about electronic music, I think, to pull it off, like how the program Max works and stuff like that. Because I think the Shankler uses Isaac Shankler's piece uses like Max, and we had to have like a fifth person like sit in the hall and like look at the score, which has the indications, because he says you can do it with like a pedal, like one of the players does it, but it becomes cumbersome because you have like the vibraphone pedal and you have your own pedal for like your iPad and everything, and so it's just easier if someone else like switches them on and off, which is the thing. And not everyone knows how to use Macs because I don't think that's like a thing that a lot of institutions offer. I don't know how much there's like classes or anything on it, but it's really cool. And there, of course, there's more that you can do it with like other stuff too. It doesn't have to be with Macs, but I don't know that much about it.
Yeah, I do not know much about Macs either. The little I know, it's really cool. But the other thing is it's becoming more popular, and I feel like there are groups that are using it a lot and larger ensembles, like larger mixed chamber groups, so still not huge, but bigger than just like a duo using it. So there's got to be a piece out there or a piece in the works, which would be really cool.
Yeah, someone commissioned someone to do it because it sounds like a cool idea.
Yes, exactly.
Amazing.
Cool. Do you have any other thoughts?
I don't have any more thoughts, but
Okay. Do we want to move on to the next one?
we can.
Yeah, let's do it.
I'm gonna save this webpage for later. This is really interesting. Like my nerd brain is on. Cool. Do you want to talk about this next piece?
Yeah, so I learned about this next piece from a guest teacher here at the Hart School. His name's Rogerio Bacata. And he teaches a class called Rhythmica, which is a study of rhythm where like you have I would say 2 to 3, depending on how you think about it, different like rhythmic patterns or ostinatos occurring at the same time. And it's like, how do you play all of those as one individual without thinking about the vertical alignment and making sure like instead you're thinking horizontally in terms of phrasing and things like that. And so over the summer, he sent us this piece because it's a great example for us. It was a great example of how like Rhythmica can be applied to a solo like percussion piece. But I just really liked the work because of its use of this, I don't know what you would call it. It's like a pipe wind instrument that you play with your feet. Along with like the percussion stuff. So we can listen to, I'd say like part of the beginning and then a little bit more in the middle, just so you know on the video, like half the video is the performance and half is a talk through of the performance. But this is Tambour de Pan. So that's a little snippet of that piece. I love the constructed pipe instrument. I think it's so cool, especially because like when you first see it, you think it's only those 6 pipes, and there's just like so many nuts and bolts to it. Just like, you put the cap on and that changes, and then oh, I'm gonna extend the tube, or I'm going to extend it, but not as much. And then the little flaps that they put up as they go, and then even I don't know if you saw them, but the handheld ones. So he's got the one he's playing with his feet, and then he's got 2 that are like by his side that he in one part of it that we skipped, he's like picking them up and like letting them fall, and they like they make a pitch sound, but they're also like you can hear they're deflating, so like the pitch is changing. But it's super cool because you're doing that and then you're also playing percussion instruments at the same time. It's wild.
Yeah, this is crazy. I love this so much. It always like it's kind of interesting because I would never think of a concept like that integrating as well as it does, because I feel like I would be too concerned about like having the foot pedals go, and then like because there's like the bass drum and the hi-hat too. And so when he like goes into the second part and he's like mixing like the pipes and the like bass drum and the multi percussion, like freaked me out. Like the pipes came in and I was like, whoa. Did not expect it.
Yeah, for one, the performer does a great job. Like the seamlessness between like moving from the hi-hat to moving to the pipes is awesome and amazing. But also there is something to say about the composer, like being very thoughtful in terms of like when to change.
Yeah.
Yeah. I also think there are moments where you think it's the foot, but I think it's actually sometimes that hand is pulling one of the ones by the side and like getting it to respond.
I gotta find that. I wanna see what it looks like.
It was in the first clip we watched. Like, there's the moment where his feet stop and he goes to play the percussion stuff, and you just hear and it's like a high pitched sound. And that's, if you watch in the video, you could see the pipe is like high, and then as it goes low until it's off screen.
Oh, I
So,
see.
so
Here, oh, I think I found it.
okay.
Let me see if I can. I literally found the part where he's grabbing it, so I think this is it. Like this. Yeah, it's pretty sick.
Yeah.
It sounds like a train. Like
It's super cool that it's a train sound. Yeah. It also just, I think I really like it because it's like this instrument we've never seen before. Or maybe, I don't know, I feel like I've seen things like it, but I've never thought of those things as a musical instrument. So it's super cool to like see someone construct something new out of things that at least I've seen before, like
did
pipes.
did the composer like come up with this instrument, or is this like devised on the part of the percussionist? Like they had like it just said like I imagine it maybe the composer came up with it.
I do not know. I'm going to see if there's any information about it. Let's see. What is this? Well, unfortunately, this is not in English, and I like English, which is unfortunate. So let me see if I can translate it. Interesting. This doesn't say anything about what the piece is about, and on the composer's website, yeah, unfortunately, there's no information on the piece and like what inspired him to write it, or if he's created this instrument, or if he found someone else using it and decided to use it in his work.
Huh.
So I cannot answer that question, unfortunately.
That's fair. I'm like thinking of like a way that you could devise, like maybe you could, because I don't know how it's notating the piece, but like it sounds like it's kind of just like describing actions, maybe like put your fingers on this or do this or like have the pedals go in this rhythm.
Mm-hmm.
But like if you could specify like pitched content, maybe it'd be cool to like have some sort of like pitch relationship, but then like let the levers go. So like as you're playing like the passage, it like slowly like glissandos down like relative to itself or something.
Yeah. I don't know. I haven't seen the music, but that would make a lot more sense than being like, this has to be a G, and this is to be whatever. Because also, if you watch his finger on the pipe, like if this is the pipe, there are moments where like his finger covers the whole thing, and then there are moments where like it half covers.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming because it happens multiple times that it's on purpose, and like the composer is calling for that. Because there is a change in pitch when like his finger is all the way over the pipe versus not.
Yeah. And I noticed that too when they did like the close up and it was like I thought he had just like missed the pipe, but it was like just half on.
Yeah. So
Yeah, I'd be interested.
cool.
Can I like rent this? Ship it from France?
I don't know. It's super cool
Probably
though.
probably not, but
I mean, it looks like looking at the instrument, it's
it's
just
really just like yeah.
BBC pipe with pipe attached. I wonder if I don't know. I didn't stay in physics long enough to know how this works. I don't know if the length from the pipe to the like from the foot pedal to the pipe matters, or if just the length from if it's like a T-bar from this point to the top matters in terms of pitch.
Oh, I didn't even think about that. I was just thinking about like the literal length of the PVC pipe. But yeah, that'd be
Yeah,
interesting to look at too.
just because there's moments where he's not pushing on any of them and he's just using his feet. And so I'm wondering if like the full I just don't know enough about the science behind it. I don't know if like every single pipe is like from the starting point all the way to the ending, or if it's just where the T is that matters.
I think it I feel like it would be like the whole length. Like that I feel like that makes the most sense, but I don't know. I'd have to like play with it.
See, but then my thought, I don't think it could be the full length, because if it was, then it should be a very low pitch we're hearing. But instead, we're hearing all these super high pitches.
That's true. Well, I don't know then. It maybe it's like the length matters, but it's not like maybe you need like really long tubing. Like because I'm thinking like tubas and trombones have like and horns have like huge lengths of tubing to get like low notes.
Hmm.
But then I'm thinking of like bassoons, and they can get low notes, and it's not like, that's not like a huge instrument.
That's true. Okay.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know either.
I can't handle it.
Yeah. But
Well,
super cool. The feet doing one thing, the hands doing another. I think my favorite moment is actually the moment that you showed up a moment ago, where he goes from using the pipes to using the like objects he has, the percussion instruments. Um, and I wonder if in the score it asks for this, but like the instruments are tuned very similarly to where the pipes are at that moment.
mm,
They're
yeah.
not exactly the same, but like they're just very complementary. And I wonder if the composer like actually wrote that out or if the performer decided to do that.
Yeah, I'd love to look at this score just to see how specific they got with
Yes.
like the notes or pitches or the types of timbre.
Yeah. Well, in the video, when it was going through, granted, we only got to see the part where he's playing percussion and his iPad is in the shot for a second. Like, that's all just standard notation, it looks like.
Yeah, maybe there's something in the front that's like these metals are like this pitch, or it just
Mhm.
says like these metals like opera gong, like whatever pitch or something.
Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah. I don't know if you can even purchase this score. Maybe.
I mean, it
Maybe not.
was premiered this year, so the ensemble intercontemporain might still have like legal rights over it, or like the contract might say you can't purchase it yet.
That's true. And if it's from Europe, it might be tough to get in the United States, depending on like the level of availability.
Yeah. Um, I'm trying to see here on his website what's going on. Yeah, it doesn't. It looks like you have to contact him if you want to purchase a score, which makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A
But yeah,
nice
it'd be really cool to look at.
recital banger.
Yes.
What would my mom think if I programmed this?
It's cool though. Like it would be really cool.
It is. I'm like mystified by it. I need to like know more about it.
Yeah.
But
It's
yeah,
super cool.
we can move on to the next one if you want. Unless there's more to say.
Um, well, I just like I translated his bio to English and he said that he's heavily influenced by Balinese music. Um,
Oh,
and I feel like that makes sense now.
like gamelan music?
It says, okay, if this translation on Google Translate is correct. um, yeah, he studies traditional gamelan music. And he's also obsessed with the avant-garde music of young Balinese composers.
Oh, interesting.
So, and he says that as a composer, he likes to implement the ideas of gamelan ensembles through the assimilation of fundamental and structural Balinese principles and translate it to Western instrumental ensembles.
Oh, I see. So it's not like straight up like taking those things. It's like taking them and then like rethinking them like for Western instruments.
Yes.
Huh. Yeah, I'd have to look at more of his work.
Yeah.
Cool.
Okay. Let's go on to the next one.
Heck yeah.
So, Mirroring by Claire Edwards is a vibraphone solo. I was looking for works that we could discuss and was just looking through like rep lists, and I found this piece, and I said, "Sounds interesting. Let's do it." So I picked it. And actually, after listening to it, I do this sometimes where I'll just recommend pieces and have not listened to them previously, and that's what I did for these next two. But I actually really like this one after listening to it. So,
Do you want me to play the whole thing, or?
It's like 5 minutes. So if we can hear like maybe a little bit of the beginning and a little bit of like a little after halfway, that would be great.
Sure.
Thank you.
No problem. Cool. I'll skip ahead to the second portion here.
So I ended up really liking this work because I think like the changes in timbre between, I don't know if it's rattan or if she's using like dowel rods, um, but like the changes between those two implements, I think is really nice and like creates this contrast. But because the material, like the harmonic and melodic material is the same, it combines them in a really cool way where you're like, oh, it's different, but it's still like is very fitting for the piece, even though it does feel like the timbral difference is pretty dramatic. And then I also just really appreciate how it sounds like it's like a two voice work. Like you've got the lower notes that are like playing a line, and then the upper notes are like playing their own line. And the way that they're all moving around is, I don't know, it's just very intriguing to me, and I really like it.
Yeah, I really like this piece too. It was really interesting because the second section kind of surprised me because there was like just the pulsing like note in the middle and then kind of the chords that were floating in and out around it. And that was like a really cool contrast to kind of the more arpeggiated stuff that was happening originally. I'd love to see like a performance of it. Like I know this is just like an audio, but I'd love to see like how it works out like physically to do those things.
Technically.
Yes. It would be super cool to see that, and like, as you said, like, how are they making those three voices work all at once? And then the implement changes too.
Yeah, because especially with a title like Mirroring, that's very like evocative if it has like the one line in the middle and then like the perhaps like the harmony is mirrored or something about like the hands, because that's what I'm thinking is like maybe the performance there's some sort of like physical mirroring happening.
That is actually a great point. Because if you listen to it also, I was thinking, oh, the lines are so cool because it sounds like they're moving contrapuntally.
Yeah.
And with the piece called Mirroring, they probably are, but probably more because she was trying to create the effect of the mirroring rather than
Like,
maybe like actual contrapuntal motion, like as her thought for the piece.
yeah, I mean, that's really cool. I've seen people who've experimented with like taking like a physical idea and then just seeing like what happens with the notes, like the rhythms and the harmony out of it. And sometimes there are people who just take it like so literally where like physically it works and then just kind of like sounds like really weird, but like it's kind of cool because you can get those like harmonies that are like not really predetermined, almost like they're kind of just like whatever results from being able to mirror like exactly.
Yeah, it's fun, the coincidences that occur from taking other things as your sole source of compositional inspiration, and how that like you get the musical coincidences that you're like, oh, that's a really cool moment. Oh, like that's something we would have written. It's really cool, but for me it also like raises the question of like all this music theory stuff is based on what we think the composers were thinking about, but what if they were just thinking about, oh, wouldn't it be cool if my hands moved apart and then moved together?
I think about that so frequently. I'm like, oh, all this cool stuff is here. I don't know if they intended it, but it's there.
Yeah.
Let me see if I can like real quick find like a live recording of it.
If you did that, that'd be great. We should watch a little bit of it. That'd be cool to see.
There's videos of her playing, but not of this specific piece.
Dang, that is unfortunate. Yeah, because I want to know, do you think it's like timbali sticks or do you think it's rattan?
It sounded like drumsticks or timbali sticks. It didn't sound like mallet shafts to me.
Yeah, it doesn't, that would have been a thinner sound.
Yeah, it sounded too like there was a lot of presence in the sound.
Yes.
Oh, she's Australian.
Yes, she is.
Oh, this is like a new work from 2021.
Ah.
That's cool. There's a sample of
Not
Open it later. So.
Oh, it does say in the sample that I have, it says switches to shaft ends of mallets.
Oh, so it is the shafts of mallets.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Hmm.
I don't know, in that recording, it doesn't sound like shafts of mallets. I'll say it.
Yeah.
It sounds more like timbali sticks or dowel rods that are really thick or something like that.
Maybe they did it just for the recording. They just switched it over.
I could see that.
Oh, this is a It's not by her. It's by a composer named Alice Chance.
Oh,
Okay, I'm glad I did some digging.
I'm glad you did some digging too, because when I checked on the website, it. Oh no. Let me find it. Command F. Okay. Yeah, it is by Alice Chance. Did I put that in the email or did I put the wrong thing in the email? 1 second, I gotta check real quick.
Yeah.
Oh, I put the wrong name. That's my fault. I will fix that. It's good to know.
Oh, it's like a lockdown piece. I see.
Ah, so it's written in for
Reflects.
COVID.
Yeah. Mirroring can describe the reflection of an image, the creation of symmetry, and the act of imitation between people. Written amidst various lockdowns, the piece reflects on the warmth created between people when they mirror each other, whether in speech or body language, and the saddening reflections and distortions which can take place when this communication is moved online. Nice.
That's super cool. It's
Moving
also
between.
ironic because they're talking about it online.
I know. Whoops. It's cool though. Yeah, it talks about the cold and warm timbres. So the by mallets are supposed to be like warmer and the shafts are supposed to be like cold.
Yeah, I totally hear that.
Yeah, and then she marks the she specifically references the difference between like dissonant dissonant kind of sounds and more lingering like resonant sounds that occur.
Mm, yes, because that happens throughout. Because she's got like the long notes, and then she's got the moments where there's like the counterpoint happening, and then yeah, sometimes in that counterpoint you'll have longer notes.
Yeah, and it's all written on one staff, which is I know that's normal, but sometimes I expected kind of with counterpoint that maybe there was even like some sort of like two like
Stem
voices.
directions.
Yeah, but it's all just one thing. I mean, there is some of that, but not too much of it.
Is it
Like.
on? Are you looking on her website?
Yeah, I'm just looking at this like score sample. I can share it.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Score sample. If you'll let me. Can you see it?
Yeah, I can.
Yeah, this is just I guess rehearsal A. But yeah.
Oh, but even still, like, I feel like she's slurred it in a way that like makes it make sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, because like in the second measure, like she slurred the bottom two notes and the top two notes, like the different voicings. And then like the last measure of that first line, like she slurred that whole figure, but I think that's because like the D to the F is like one idea, and then the D G F is like the other idea.
I
And they're
see.
like I think they're both like converging to F. At least in my brain, that's kind of how I see it.
Oh, I see what you're saying. I was kind of thinking of the slurs as like pedal indications almost. Like you just pedal with the slurs. Um, I don't know how standard that is. Yeah, it's kind of bluesy sometimes too, like here.
Mm-hmm.
So interesting.
Yeah.
Well, well,
It's also nice to see. I don't know. Maybe this is just me as a performer, but I really appreciate when I look at a score and I'm like, oh, this makes a lot of sense. This does not look that difficult, but there's a lot, like listening to the recording, there's a lot of musical material here, and there's like a lot you can do with it.
yeah, I think this is the one thing that from a performer standpoint, I've seen some scores that are like, um, they, especially when people use like prepared instruments where like the notation just gets so weird, and it's like not, it doesn't like need to be that weird. Like it's like something that could have been notated like this, and you could have just moved the notes or slurs or whatever around. But then
Hmm.
I get, there's this one piece, I don't remember what it is. Someone sent it to me one time, and it was like a marimba piece, and it had like all of these, like every bar was like prepared with like some thing, and you had to like hit this, like use like these Chinese symbols and like hit all these different things, and it was like a crazy. It wasn't that like Lucas Ligeti piece. It was like a different piece that was like totally like crazy, and it was a cool like it was a cool thing. But I think I looked at the score, and it just had like all this graphic notation that I think was like not necessarily like warranted in that context. Like it could have just been like a glissando notation or some sort of thing, and it would have been clear kind of what the intent was. But
Yeah, there's a point where it's like, as a composer, you're like, oh, I think this makes more sense. But then as a performer, you're like, okay, now I have to learn this whole new language and I have to figure out what it means. And that's going to take like half my practice time. So, like, simple is better.
that has happened to me, even like playing, like being a composer and a percussionist. Like I imagine a lot of people feel this way, that like sometimes you get, maybe this is me because I just like go off the deep end sometimes, but you can like get in this mode of like you have something very specific you want, and it's not like a standard thing people ask for. So I get this way with like instruments that are not percussion, where you go down this rabbit hole of like this is gonna work, and then you give it to a player and they're like, I have no idea like what you're even asking me to do here. And so it's like weird because as a percussionist I was like, no, I got this. Then I would like encounter that with other people, and I'd be like, oh yeah, you can't escape. You have to like just do it a lot. There's not even like, there's like classes and stuff, but sometimes it still like sneaks up. Even for percussion, there were tons of things that I wrote that when I was younger that I was like, I look back at it now, and I was like editing a score recently, and I was like, what is any, how did they even play this? Like I was like, this is like unreadable.
I had that happen where it wasn't even that the notation was a problem, it's that the way I explained what the notation meant was a problem. Where it's like, oh, you play on the edge of the gong. And like most people assume, oh, you just like play at the edge of it. Right.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's not actually what I meant. What I meant is like the gongs normally have like lips on them. I wanted it on the like the edge, like right there. And looking back, I'm like, Hannah, that was not specific enough. um yeah. So I think it goes both ways. We're like any not being clear enough, but also being too detailed can be a problem depending.
Yeah, and
I'm
it depends on the performance. Oh, sorry, go for it.
You're good. I'm unmuting briefly to commiserate because I feel like I have a really good sense of like, okay, performer brain, composer brain, we're on the same track, except for vibe pedalings. Literally, vibe pedalings are the one thing that I'm just like, how do you make this sound good? Like, I never want to make those decisions.
I totally agree. Even when I read the music and there's the pedalings in there, I'm like, thank God they did that for me because I don't want to figure it out.
I always am just like, okay, figure it out. I don't know what you want from me. Because even, I don't know, I'm just like, look, this is what I want to hear. Do whatever you do. If I show up to the first rehearsal and I don't say anything, it's probably fine. Like, I'm not gonna be mad. It's okay.
With the last thing I wrote, I just printed out multiple copies and like did not mark pedalings and then just put it on my stand and read through and kind of put in pencil what I did that day. And then I tried it another time and tried to see if my brain wanted to do something else or if I like came to a consistent result. But yeah, it's bad. I don't like it. Vibe pedalings are bad.
I think it literally is like a personal taste thing for that too. It's not like Boeing's where it's like there's like a standard kind of like way it works out. Like it's just like there's so many different, and then there's like half pedaling, and then there's like it's just like Okay. It's up to personal preference. But I've had some performers get upset that there's not like indications. So I don't know. Who knows?
Well, it's also difficult because, like, at least for me, like, depending on where you pedal, like, the overtones sound totally different. And, like, do you want there to be clash or do you not want there to be clash? And yeah,
True. I didn't even think about that. And I have a vibe solo commission coming up too. So these are all things I have to think about. Or I'm gonna like that's crazy. Okay, I wonder if like there's like a way that I could just like have some sort of pedaling system that like leaves room for like I could put it and be like, this is fine, but you can also change it if you want.
I feel like also just describing musically what you want to happen, like if it should be kind of clear sounding or if you want medium resonance or a lot of resonance. So that way it gives the performer a starting point and can answer like some of the big questions. But then I think if a composer told me to quarter pedal and I half pedaled or vice versa, I don't think it's a huge deal. Unless it is. Which is again just like it's also hard to know whether these are suggestions or requirements because it falls in that weird gray area kind of with dynamics.
yeah. I totally agree that it's a gray area, but I like depending on who you talk to, they don't like some people don't think it's a gray area. They're like the ink is black and that means that it has to be done that way. Whereas some of us are like, this is a suggestion about what should happen.
I'm going to
So
start printing all my scores in gray ink.
You could
that's a
do
great
like
idea.
erasable ink so people could literally change the pedalings.
That would be fun. Or like invisible ink.
Yeah, you could get like you have to shine a light to see like the pedalings. And then if you don't like them, just they're not there. Just don't look at them.
Yeah. I do like the idea, Lewis, though, of like putting more what you're looking for. Because, I mean, maybe we're thinking of pedaling too much like people when new mouths, like, you know, some composers in large ensemble music, they'll be like, I want you to use the red, like, whatever mallet. And it's like, that doesn't tell me anything. And also, like, over time, that mallet's going to go out of like production. And so like now most of the time people put like, you know, hard articulate mallet. Maybe that bipedaling needs to take a transition from here's exactly what I want to here's what I'm looking for sonically. Do that how you can. Here's my suggestion.
Yeah, that makes sense. Also, I have to run to Lowe's to pick up 5 foot EMT 3/4 inch pipes, as one does on a Sunday. But um, nice to hear your voices as I go about my Sunday tasks, and I will chat with you guys later.
Sounds good. Are you gonna make the instrument from tambour de pod?
I wish maybe I'll pick up just like an extra PVC while I'm there. See what happens.
Yeah, it's good to
And
hear
do
from you.
in a drill. Yep. All right. See you guys.
Well, see ya.
Bye.
Okay.
Cool. You gotta go
I'm
last.
glad
Go ahead.
I'm glad that he shares some of those like same anxieties I have. But he had like good solutions too. My instinct is always just like, okay, I don't know what to do. I'm just gonna let them
Just
figure
let
it
the
out.
performer figure it out. It's not for me.
Yeah. Okay. I have the last one pulled up.
Cool.
Super
Let's
short.
do it.
Uh,
Yeah, this piece is really weird. That is all I'm gonna say.
okay. Is it cool if I play the whole thing?
Yeah, let's hear the whole thing.
Okay, cool.
I needed a rest, so I rented a big house near a coastal town far from the city. The house was 10 miles from the town on a gravel road that led to the sea. I hadn't walked far when I tripped over something.
Is that you, sir?
A man stood up with difficulty.
Sir, is that you?
He climbed down into a hole. I knelt down and put my head in. The hole measured over a yard wide, and I couldn't make out anything inside. From the kitchen windows I could see the beach. There were hardly any waves. The water was ideal for swimming. I crossed the kitchen and looked through the front window. The man was still there. He alternated between looking toward the hole and studying the sky. I realized that one gesture from me would have sufficed to make the man run to the hole and start looking. I saw the man pick up the shovel, go down the stairs from the house toward the field, and disappear into the hole. I stood up and walked toward the sea. When I returned, the digger wasn't there. I looked in and around the hole. I lay face down on the ground, stuck my hand in, and felt the boards. This was a meticulous work. The hole was approximately 3 feet wide and seemed to go down toward the center of the earth. I entertained the possibility of getting in, but right away I ruled it out. When I put one hand on the ground to push myself up, the edge crumbled. For the first time, the digger was looking at me with distrust. Then the digger picked up his shovel and, looking me in the eyes, drove it into the ground again.
Nice.
So yeah, this was another one I did not listen to before submitting it to the group. It's very interesting. So obviously with it, being on Zoom, it's a COVID piece. The text is by Samantha Schweblin, who's an Argentinian writer who's written like multiple short stories and novellas. So the text comes from that, but it's very interesting to see how Laura decided to like put all that together. And then her use of the, what would you call that? Like robotic like voice.
Yeah.
It's
Is it like
very,
a track?
I believe so, yes. um it's super ominous in a really weird way. Like you start out and you're like, oh, this is funny, but then the more you listen to it, the piece just becomes more and more ominous, in my
Yeah.
opinion.
I thought it was like him talking at first, but then his mouth wasn't moving, and that kind of like made me feel a little weird. I was like, whoa.
To me, it sounds like one of the famous British actors.
It does.
The older gentleman who has like a round face and white hair. Let me see if I can find who I'm thinking of.
Yeah, I'd have to hear it. Or
Michael Caine.
oh yeah. Oh my god.
It sounds like Michael Caine. It might be.
It
I
could-
don't know.
Yeah. Go research mode. I gotta figure it out.
Yeah, but the instrumentation, it's like very nice and compact, but it's very interesting because of the use of the gravel inside the upside down floor tom, and then the implements of like a little shovel and a little rake, and which is funny. um but it
I
also
love
like
it.
they make cool sounds. Yeah, I'm gonna keep
Yeah.
blabbering, but this piece is super, it's super weird and super ominous, but it's also super funny at points.
I want to know the what the prerogative is, like the intentional like shift in terms of like what is the emotion supposed to be, or is it kind of supposed to be ambiguous like throughout, like intentionally?
Mm. I don't know. Let's see. Yeah, so it's read by a disembodied computer voice. It explores ideas of communication, storytelling, and the ease with which we can be persuaded of someone else's truth, or at other times find ourselves in an endless communication cycle of crossed wires.
Yeah, I think the theatrics are great, and I don't I love them a lot. I don't know what to quite make of them in terms of like how, like, because I don't have the score, like how much the performer is like taking over and like deciding, like, because he stared into camera, and so
Multiple times, not just once, multiple times.
yeah. So I wonder if it's like stare at audience, or if, like at like a specific audience member maybe, because that definitely like anytime in a performance, I feel like when like the performer makes eye contact with like a specific person in the audience, it's like a really striking moment. And
Mhm.
so I think I was in a master class once with like Pius Chung, like a really long time ago, like over the pandemic, like the beginning of the pandemic. And we had a graduate student playing Chick by Nicholas Martinikow. I don't know how to say his name. Which is like a third drum solo with like a bunch of implements and stuff. And there's this moment where like randomly, like 5 minutes into the piece, the player just starts like talking, and it's like super out of nowhere. And it's like it's kind of, there's like this moment where like a brush comes in to like beat like make the pulse, and then like you talk like you do like kind of like this conical type thing over it, which is
Mhm.
what the talking is. And so I think he did like the guy that was playing it just like stared like into space, but then Pius Chung was like, I think it'd be really cool if you just like stared at someone in the audience for like the entire 30 seconds of that passage, just freak them out. And I was like, that's really funny. So I mean, it freaked me out, so the law still holds. But
Yeah, but it was cool.
it was cool. I'm interested. Yeah, I always love like the interpretation of text as like literal items in percussion, which is one of my favorite things to do when you put text into a percussion piece that no other like anything else I think can do, is that it's literally like you can bring like the sounds of whatever the text is about, like into what's going on, which I love.
Yes, it's super cool. And not to be a total nerd, but I just had to write a paper on like the early chamber works that include percussion, and Stravinsky's Les Nozes, like that's like one of the second like big significant works that has percussion in it, and it's like percussion with choir, and I just like wonder how much that piece like influenced the whole like percussion, like speaking percussionist thing, because like that piece is integral to what we do, and in that piece like there are like referential moments where like they're talking about the wedding that's about to occur, and then like the wedding bells go off or whatever, and like this piece
Yeah,
we're talking about digging, and like they're making gravel sounds and like doing all this stuff.
that's interesting. It's kind of been a hallmark of opera for a long time, was to bring in percussion like to match whatever was going on like in the scene. But yeah, that kind of reminds me of like that, I know that piece, it's really cool, but it reminds me of like the Ballet Mécanique, which is another piece that's kind of like that, where, and that's like a silent movie score with just like percussion and pianos. I think Listenos is like a choir, percussion, and 4 pianos, I think.
Yeah, it's piano, choir, for vocal soloists, and percussion.
Yeah, so that's really interesting because text painting takes on like a whole different, like, there's like a whole other world of things to do with text and percussion, I think, that is has yet to be explored, because people have like kind of done stuff like that, but it seems more like just kind of like one-off things, not like real like consistent efforts.
It's also one of those things where I feel like there's like two different schools of thought on it. There's like the one school that's like the percussion sound, like percussion sounds should mimic the textual rhythm of the speaker. And then I feel like there's this other school of thought that's like it should not. And then sound effects like bridges the two together.
Yeah, that's like the India Kehoe piece, Stop Speaking, I think that's what it's called, the snare drum solo with the like Mac OS like default voice.
Yeah,
because that piece is kind of what you're talking about, where like I think it has like rhythms in it, but it's not like barred in any specific way. I think it's literally just like matches up with like, you're just supposed to match it up with the track, like, without a pulse.
yeah.
Yeah, that's always tough to do, but it's cool because you, over time, because it's the same recording, you can like feel it out. So I think people are like, well, it's like not metered, but it doesn't matter if it's metered, because it can like, if it's the same track you're playing with a bunch of times, it'll be the same thing, so you can anticipate it in the way that it like says to you.
Yeah. Well, even without meter, there's like a rhythm to it and like a flow, and things are gonna happen at specific times.
Yeah, totally. Well, cool. All right, next time I will not forget to submit the Burtner. I totally blanked.
It's okay. I am gonna stop the recording now. So this is the end of our meeting. Bye, y'all. Stop recording.